Everybody.
Thanks, Doug. This is it's so exciting to be here. And before I begin and bring up the panelists, I just wanted to talk a little bit about iGel and thank iGel for bringing us all together. Heiko and Jed, what you guys are doing is amazing. I thank you for the bold, audacious vision, and all of us here do. And I think one of the things that's amazing is this iGel innovation, right? iGel is pushing the technology envelope, and really what these panelists are doing is translating that innovation into real-world customer solutions. These guys are the guys that make it real, delivering compelling experiences for customers, and we're going to hear a lot about that. One of the things that's amazing about iGel and this whole conference that Jed pulled it together is just this feeling around the company, the energy. And I think I've been covering the technology business for 30 years, and rarely do you see everything come together. The timing, the technology, the channel programs, the knowledge, all of it come together. And that's what iGel has right now, I think, that's so amazing. And it is disruption. And I think all of us here should thank iGel for that disruption. Again, that bold vision. You know, I'm a big NCAA basketball fan. And at the end of the March Madness every year, they play this tribute called One Shining Moment. And that's what I think this is for iGel right now, and for the partners, and for, most importantly, the customers who are seeing the difference. We heard it. And Doug, setting this up with all those stories, it is the stories that are so amazing. So let's get to it. Let's bring up our panelists, and then we'll introduce each of these people. Let's get to how these guys are translating innovation into compelling customer solutions. I'm going to introduce them all, and we're going to get right to it. Got it? Thanks, buddy. All right. So let's get to, these are the really super bright, smart people that are making it happen in the field. So let me start. Right on my right here is Robert Green. He is the co-founder and CTO of Digion. They are a born-in-the-cloud desktop as a service company. They are changing the game. I view these guys kind of as a little bit like the Amazon of desktop as a service, right? And years ago, we used to say, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do VDI, right? Well, Robert literally is kind of a rocket scientist. In fact, he developed applications for the next generation James Webb Space Telescope at NASA. I love that. That is amazing. And then if that isn't enough, he later joined Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory, where he developed a top-secret computing project on warfare analysis. Now, that's something we're probably not going to get into today. All right. Next up, Roxanne Sawyer, who is Vice President of Sales for the Central Region for MTM Technologies, one of the real icons of this solution provider business, celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Amazing. And you know, we had Eva Helen here yesterday talking about women in the channel and the pioneering women out there. Roxanne is one of the true women in the channel pioneers. She is a self-made woman. She invented herself. She started in the typing pool at AT&T more than 30 years ago and is now one of the top tech salespeople in the country. It's an amazing story. She's broken a lot of glass ceilings and a lot of sales barriers. She's been a sales VP at Cisco, Nortel, and now she's leading MTM's groundbreaking Anywhere app, which is hand in hand with iGel. Amazing. Congratulations to you. Right? Next up, Bob Allred. He is the end user computing practice manager for Right Systems with an exclamation point. I love that. Whoever thought of that. I want that on my name. Anyway. These guys are one of the top Citrix solution providers in the country. They've been doing it for some 20 years. Bob is one of the top Citrix engineers in the country. In fact, he is the recipient of the Citrix Partner Engineer of the Year award. And if you know these guys at Right Systems, of course, they've won just about every Citrix award over the year. It's really amazing kind of how you guys have made that specialty practice your core competency and done such an amazing job with it. One of the things I love about Bob is he has this saying, it's a maniacal focus on that customer experience. I think we could all learn from it. He likes to remind his colleagues that every single one of us is here to support that person at the end of the keyboard. It's kind of the Amazon model. Amazing. Thank you. And last but not least, I love this guy. Brian Barnes, the Director of Solutions Architecture for Cortex Services, one of the top IT healthcare providers, service providers in the country. Brian oversees the engineering sales teams and the cloud and healthcare workflows. He's one of those rare technologists that's able to bridge that big gap between technology and business outcomes. You can be a business guy talking to him or a technologist, and you're like, how do I get this stuff? Anyway, he's also he also led the team that won a Citrix Global Innovation Award for building a secure cloud environment for a 3D-based engineering application for a shoe manufacturer with teams in China and North America. This is amazing. That Cortex solution, delivering that compelling experience, reduced the engineering time for that company from 400 days to 115 days. Amazing. That is ROI. And if that isn't enough, he's a nice guy. Brian was part of a 33-person team that raised funds and brought medical and humanitarian relief to Zambia, Africa. Talk about changing the world. You did it, brother. Anyway, I'm going to stop. Rob, you guys, again, kind of coming at it from a born-in-the-cloud provider, you guys did the hard work. You did the analysis. iGel versus the competition. Give us the real deal, buddy, the real difference and why you guys chose iGel. I'm going to have to ask you guys to step in, too. Why? Why was iGel the best partner?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mike? Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Oh, sorry. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that.
All right. So really, I'll tell a story. So about 2.5 years ago, I was meeting with one of our service provider partners, and they do a DR as a service. So what they do is they basically have a room in their data center that's got 100 PCs kind of lined up in big rows, and how that works is every few months or so, a company does an exercise and brings a new set of organizations into that room. They set up, and it takes about a good 2 to 3 weeks to set this up. So I said, there's got to be a better way to do that. That just seems odd, and you can get more money out of this project if you had a way to turn those PCs into desktop as a service. But the problem was the endpoints. How do you flip them very quickly? So we then kind of sat down over beers. We're thinking, well, if I had a way to solve that endpoint problem, we could actually flip those PCs very quickly, and you can actually triple your business. So over beers, we were thinking, well, I need something that plugs in. I need something that is accessible over the LAN, not over the WAN, not the LAN. And then I need a way for us to be able to kind of switch context very quickly. So we went out to the market. We looked at everybody. We looked at WISE. We looked at a myriad of other kind of solutions, but they were all on LAN or required a VPN connection. That won't work in a cloud environment. It just doesn't scale. And so we decided, well, they don't have one. We're going to go build one. So we launched our Z-Link product line. And the Z-Link product line really was about, all right, I need a way to take a PC and quickly turn it into a thin client. So in a couple different ways. One, I want just software only, right? That was core. If I could just turn that PC into a thin client with a piece of software, with a pluggable, that makes sense. So we looked at software, we looked at a pluggable. So plug something in, boot up off of a USB, or have an HDMI plug in to a monitor, that would work. And then, of course, you need your regular thin client. So those three solutions were the core tenets of our Z-Link product line that actually kind of went into the endpoint and said, okay, we're going to quickly turn your existing real estate into something that can actually consume desktop as a service. We rolled our own. We went out to China. We manufactured our own because there was nothing out there that had those three core tenets to it. And it was massively successful from an interest perspective. Our customers loved it. Problem was that it took my engineers a ton of time to build it. We got into endpoint security. We got into rolling our own versions of Windows, managing device drivers using Windows IoT. I mean, it was cumbersome. So then, we said, okay, there's got to be a better way, right? We got massive interest from our customers because we're solving that problem. How do we turn PCs into something that we can use now and leverage kind of desktop as a service as we need it? So we looked at iGel, and iGel had those three core tenets. It had the software component, which was massively important. It had the pluggable, which is that UD pocket, and it had a traditional thin client device. But the thing that iGel also brought was the security. We could actually take this and build it into our PCI and compliance practice. No other thin client could do that. Period. So really. It solved a problem in the market. It also solved an engineering problem for us because we were able to now focus on our core product, which is desktop as a service and user computing as a service, instead of focusing in on rolling drivers, figuring out endpoint devices, and leveraging that. So the scale, I mean, we've been an iGel partner for probably 4 months, 5 months, and we've already rolled out over 1,000 devices.
Unbelievable. Robert, so the security, the Wise and the HP, the Wise, Dell Wise and HP, that focus on security, and I know that's a big thing here, the secure endpoint management, that's the game changer?
That's huge. That's huge. I mean, we just went through our PCI audit. And when you go through a PCI audit, I'm sure many of you can attest to this. It is like an anal probing. Really, they go in they search everywhere. I mean, they're testing against you. We're doing vulnerability scans. We're doing pen tests. We're doing everything all the way from the endpoint. And with iGel, we passed with flying colors. There was nothing, control, boom, boom. I mean, it tied directly into all the security we built into our cloud practice. It just tied together. So end to end, I could tell an auditor, we have a secure connection end to end. And all those controls kind of lined up, and going through a PCI audit and seeing that attestation of compliance in that ROC, and having iGel on there, I mean, that's huge.
I wonder if you did the PC compliant on Wise and
it wouldn't happen.
And the same thing with HP.
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened. I mean, quite literally, it would have taken so much of our time to go and build a custom solution, build custom controls, put a bunch of software, like 5 different pieces of software on that endpoint in order to make it secure. iGel just did it,
Roxanne, go down the line, guys.
Yeah, let me just draft off a couple of things that he just said, that Rob just said. For us at MTM, we've been in the business for 30 years. You heard that from Steve. So we've got a legacy of customers, an installed base of customers with CPE gear, CPE solutions. And so when we started moving to the cloud and offering our Anywhere app, we had to look for something that was manageable in our cloud service. I mean, we've used iGel as a partner for on-prem solutions, but now we really had to step it up a notch and take a look at how do we support our large enterprises. I mean, we've got enterprise companies that we support that are 10,000, 20,000 end users and bigger. So we had to be looking at which of our partners could really help our reputation, make sure that they're solid, it's secure, that it's easy, that it's manageable, and we can put it right into our cloud solution and just go on day one.
Yeah, you're betting your business on it. Bob, what do you see?
Yeah, no, I think Roxanne touched on it. I think it's management. I think if you were to start a business today, you would do business different than a company that's been in business for 20 or 30 years, right? From a technology perspective. What we have is we have a lot of customers that have been in business for 20, 30, 40 years, and they have They have bolt-on technology that's grown over the years, and well, here's a problem, let's bolt some of this on, and here's a problem, let's bolt some of this on. And to manage that complex infrastructure is a disaster. It's hard. And so the value of iGel that fits into really this desktop conversation is the management, right?
Hospitals, you got a HIPAA, right? Come on.
Yeah, so there's, so appreciate, isn't Steve great? First and foremost, I just met Steve yesterday, and he, not only is he a character, but he brings so much energy to any conversation, so thanks, Steve. So from Cortex perspective, we kind of grew up out of the healthcare space, and we've been an iGel partner now going on 4 years, so we jumped on pretty early, and the reason why we jumped on is because they do a very intricate integration with a company called Imprivata. And for healthcare, that's really important because it provides two-factor authentication. It provides what's called EPCS integration, so electronic prescription of controlled substances, where they can do a biometric fingerprint, they can do a passive proximity card, they can walk into secure authentication. A lot of different workflows that healthcare has. But what healthcare has is legacy IT. They've been holding on to IT assets. When I say 10 years, I'm being nice. I mean, they've got application sets. They've got, thin clients from 3 different manufacturers. They've got Dell PCs shoved underneath nursing stations. And what iGel afforded us is flexibility, because we can walk into a healthcare organization and it doesn't matter what x86 operating system you have. It doesn't even matter what thin client hardware investments that you've put in. We can put in a solution that will not only manage all of that, but will holistically enable you to do different things more efficiently in your IT organization, right? Stop focusing on Windows on the edge. Stop, administrating large SCCM environments, managing applications for Windows-based applications. It's more about driving transformative change and providing those internal resources more strategically to more business-based initiatives.
Yeah, better healthcare too. Right?
Yeah, better healthcare, absolutely. It all comes back to the provider care, and you know that from a healthcare perspective, it's been an industry that's been undergoing massive changes. Right? They're trying to figure out, how do I squeeze money out of not only certain populations, but how do we make money as we're being squeezed from multiple angles? So the ROI is key, and without the right endpoint strategy, you'll never make any VDI project make any sense from an ROI perspective, whether you're doing it in the cloud or on-prem. So it all starts at the endpoint.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Roxanne. Roxanne, talk a little bit about what you see as the most important aspects of doing a desktop as a service, workstation as a service project. What are the most important aspects of it?
So I'll bet everybody in this room can answer this question. It's about the end user, period. Start with the end user and you work backwards. We've heard it 17 times over the past 2 days from every single presenter that's been up here. Every customer mentioned the same thing. It's about the end user. It's about the end user. Did I mention it's about the end user? All right.
Love it.
So their acceptance of anything that you roll out can make your project successful or can kill it in a minute. We've had customers that have done everything from the IT shop, have not gone to the businesses, have not really understood the critical business apps, understood how the end users want to use the solution, understood the real impact of BYOD, especially if you go into cloud. If you don't get the end users buy-in at every single phase of the implementation and deployment, you're screwed.
Good.
I think there's 2 sets of end users when you're dealing with cloud. There's that end user who's the help desk person who's kind of managing the cloud infrastructure, as well as the end user who's actually consuming it. And when we started Digion, 6 years ago, it was 7 for me because I took a year to figure out that one problem. How do I make sure that those end users have the best experience possible? And what we did was we took literally a MacBook Pro and put it next to our revision of Digion 0.10, and we decided, okay, does this meet that? Does it match that criteria? So we took the fastest MacBook Pro and said, okay, it's got to meet or beat that from an end user experience perspective, or we're not even going to launch. So it took time, and it takes time to do that, not just for 25 desktops, try 25,000 desktops. So you've got, and then you don't know the workloads, right? That's another thing. So you've got a lot of things to deal with when it comes to end user experience, and then you've got to give that help desk organization the tools to manage and see inside the environment so that they're able to very quickly respond to challenges. Because one thing from a cloud perspective is you've got, you don't know what that WAN connection is going to look like. They could be in major metropolitan area with great bandwidth, or they could be in the sticks and you have no idea where they're coming from. So that help desk person also is a very important aspect to the cloud.
I'd add to anybody that interfaces with your customers.
Yeah, right.
It's got to be excellent, perfect, because any downtime, I think we heard it again this morning, any 1 minute of your time that you're on with a customer, you're wasting company money. You're also frustrating the actual customer trying
The
to buy
Royal
your
Caribbean
services.
scenario. Talk
Absolutely.
about some of those scenarios you guys have seen out there. It's madness. I think that's going to be the the steamroller that really moves this thing forward. It's that madness that the user waiting. And I love that you guys said that. Just the boot up. And I know you guys have dealt with that at hospitals, right? Talk about it, guys.
The other thing I also want to add, and there are a couple of our customers having this challenge, it's attracting talent. And if you've got a crappy interface, or you've got it gets out. I mean, the internet has done things. Glassdoor will tell every single person trying to join your company, don't go there. They don't have their shit together. So you got to make sure that situation is under control.
Yeah, I was going to touch on the what you were saying there. And Brian said it the other day, it's end user computing, right? It's end user, and it's, I think the longer some of us are in IT, the farther we get away from the end user, right? You start on the help desk and you move through the desktop support and you move up through an organization, and now we're designing these large VDI projects and architecting and working with our customers. But it seems like often, we talk to the CISO and we talk to the director of IT and we talk to the person who manages the help desk, and we make sure that we're architecting this right and it's going to be secure and it's going to be fast. But the person that we don't spend a lot of time talking to is the end user, right? We miss that person in the conversation sometimes, and understanding, what is it that you do on a daily basis? How do you want this to look? How do you want it to feel? What are the challenges that you're trying to overcome today in the physical world or in the non-mobile world that you work in today? And so, I think we have to take it all the way back down to the person who is actually at the keyboard doing the job to find out that we're actually meeting the expectations that they want us to meet.
Yeah, I'd add also that not only in healthcare, but I think across IT, one thing that eventually happens is that as you get more focused into the systems that make your end users do their jobs, you kind of start to lose touch with your end users, right? So we'll put desktop administration tiers in place where they're going out doing SneakerNet, they're talking to the end users, but us server folks, us architects are kind of somewhat detached. And so where I think VDI and any DaaS solution has struggled over the last 3 to 5 to 7 years is that we architect them from the system end first. We want to achieve success from an administration perspective. And VDI has failed over the years because, to like all the other panelists, unless you're concentrating on the end user experience, unless you're giving the end user an experience that's going to make infrastructure invisible to them, that they're just doing their job, those VDI projects, it doesn't matter how fast we can provision, it doesn't matter how great we can get the cost, we have to drive the proper end user experience. And working with doctors and 3D engineers on CAD-based applications, those things can die quickly. And so whatever you bring to market first and matched with the right endpoint strategy is what the users will remember. And to reintroduce a second 2.0 DaaS solution, forget it. You need to hit it out of the park the first time. So you need to spend your time in piloting and proof of concepts and match those user experiences with the proper expectations. And doctors, lawyers, 3D CAD engineers, those are some of the most complex people to work with. So.
Guys, we could have 3 hours on this, but Bob, I want you to talk about why most VDI projects fails. And if you guys can all take this on and talk about some failed projects that you guys have seen and saved the day on the real world. I mean, I think that was so powerful, Robert, on the Royal Caribbean. that was the Thin Client Museum. So these failed projects that made it tough for him to get that deal approved.
Yeah, we could probably talk about this for the rest of the day, right? Everybody probably has a story. You know, I think if you go back, if you've been doing this for a while and you go back 5 or 6 years into the early days of VDI, I think we went out and we tried to tell a compelling story around VDI, right? We did server virtualization, and really, if you look back on it, that was relatively easy, right? We weren't dealing with users at that point. You know, I think we went in and we talked about what we wanted to accomplish, but I think there was a lot of barriers in the early days of VDI. Right? It was complex. There was a lot of complexity built into the solution. We didn't really understand what it was we were trying to deliver. There was a lot of cost built into the solution. I didn't have access to flash drives that I have today. So if I wanted to roll out 5,000 virtual desktops, I could build a room and fill it up with hard drives, right? Not a lot of people wanted to do that. I think that there was a lot of people that would go out to conferences like this and come back and go, oh my God, VDI, I got to do VDI. That's where it's at. It's what everybody's telling me. And so we just really didn't have enough of a grasp on what we were doing. The technology wasn't up to what it is today, right? I would talk about single image management with customers, and here's the value of doing VDI with single image management, but to actually deliver that was really hard. But today I have other options. I can layer, for example, apps in, and it makes that image management easier. The tools that were available to me a number of years ago weren't available to me today, whether it be a Unidesk or a good profile management solution like a Liquidware or something like that. So I think the tools have come a long way. The technology's come a long way. It was really, really expensive 5 years ago. When you talked about delivering those 5,000 desktops and what it would take from an IOPS perspective to do that, it's crazy, right? And that conversation, it doesn't exist anymore. I don't talk IOPS anymore with customers. It's rarely part of the conversation, right? So we've moved away from that. If you move into today and you look at why VDI projects fail today, it's not a technology issue. It can't be a technology issue. The technology is there. I think what we see more today is you're either not doing it right? So there's a lot of upfront work around architecture and design and understanding what the end users and what the business is trying to accomplish, and make sure you're targeting the right users and rolling it out progressively to bring people on and resolve issues along the way. I think actually what we see is that a lot of VDI projects fail today before they even get off the ground. And I think we're still, you know, you deal with people who, I mean, you think about it, right? You go into and you talk to the CIO about transforming the way that they deliver the experience to their users. And that's a pretty big deal, right? And I think that there's still some people that were around 4 or 5 years ago and said, yeah, you know what, we looked at that VDI thing 5 years ago. You know, that got my predecessor fired. Yeah. Or, you know, we tried that. The thin clients are, like you said, they're in the closet. You know, they don't work. It's not sexy. It's not interesting. And so there's still that effort to get over the hump with people to understand that you really have to look at digital transformation, workspace transformation. You use the buzzword you want, but if you're going to go out and replace a couple thousand old aging PCs because you have to roll out Windows 10, there's an initiative, Windows 7's going EOL, you have to get there, and the PCs that you bought 4 years ago, they're not going to run Windows 10. It's just not possible. And if you think you're going to go out and deploy 2,000 or 3,000 brand new PCs at a really high cost, like Jed was talking about earlier, and then manage those with System Center, there's a lot of complexity built into that, right? So we're still trying to go over that hump with customers that maybe think that the status quo and the way of doing business is still okay. I think there's the old reasons the VDI projects used to fail, and I think there's maybe some newer reasons that we just don't get to where we want to be today.
Yeah, I'd like to definitely take a second and add to that, because, you know, I think, you know, we're seeing existing VDI customers that might have had some moderate success, that had some deployment that's on-prem. They're looking at their infrastructure now 3 and 4 years old, and they're trying to figure out, gosh, do I want to make that capital investment again? I've got to refresh my storage tiers, or maybe do I jump into a new solution like hyperconvergence to make that on-prem? And what we're seeing, talking to customers every week across the country and around the globe, honestly, is they don't want to be in the data center business anymore. They're tired of buying and maintaining and refreshing these somewhat legacy-based systems. And so, we've heard this buzzword about the cloud for multiple years and customers struggling, how can they leverage it, how can they use it? I truly believe 2018, and you've probably heard this in 2017, 2016 as well, but I truly believe 2018 is a transformative, disruptive year for cloud-based adoption. And the reason why is because I think for the first time, Microsoft, Citrix, VMware, they've recognized the point that to drive these specific integrations, abilities of flexibility and shifting from CapEx to OpEx, they're going to need to drive to cloud adoption. And so how does a customer onboard to the cloud, right? And so they need partners that have walked through this firestorm before, because these CIOs aren't going to leap into this. They're going to tiptoe. They're going to talk to Microsoft. They're going to say, okay, how much consumption can I squeeze into my EA so it doesn't cost me much? We think that true DaaS-based adoption, desktop as a service or VDI, is probably a plethora of a multiple technology approach into this adoption, whether it's at the endpoint, whether it's walking into a Citrix or VMware workload, and what cloud manufacturer or cloud provider we use for that is key. And I think now, this year, those programs, those cloud-based technologies, whether Azure or AWS, are at a point where that adoption is here and it's real. And we're seeing customers really start to take that leap. So a little bit of tooting our own horn. So Cortex Services won 2018 Innovation Partner of the Year for our company for Wolverine Worldwide. And they had a China-based data center, a North American-based data center, and a South American-based data center that they tie their engineers together. And they couldn't do it over their existing point-to-point VPN technology or whatever it is. So now we're talking about data locality. Where should the data sit? My apps are in a different data center than where I'm going to put a desktop in the cloud. That's never going to work, right? So leveraging what Microsoft Azure is doing today and AWS is doing today to ride the networks that they're investing heavily in, and making these user experiences work. And by the way, don't worry about the endpoint anymore. I mean, I honestly think that this year is the true year for cloud adoption, especially DaaS. Yeah.
I love it.
So what I would add is drafts off a little bit of what Bob was talking about a moment ago. There's the old reasons and the new. And the old definitely had to do around infrastructure and being with a partner that could take a look at your infrastructure. And it's even today, if you don't want to move to cloud, but you want to stick with VDI that's premise-based or some hybrid solution, you've got to look at your infrastructure and make sure it's ready for the load, or else you're really in trouble. Moving forward into the as-a-service space, the way that we're looking at it too is looking at the entire workspace. So our solution is more workspace as a service and looks at the entire end-to-end workflow and takes a look at what each individual we look at individual organizations, but it even takes it down to the individual person and being able to personalize. If you can't personalize that interface or that connection, you're going to have problems with it, and you're going to fail with that as well. I've seen instances where the adoption and acceptance never occurred, and it rolled out, and the next day, people were trying to figure out how to get it off their laptops as fast as possible. And I mean, they got creative with it too, like really creative, like completely taking everything off their laptop to make sure that they got it off. So the whole workspace and looking at it as a whole as the individual and trying to figure out how you back into that is going to be what keeps you successful.
I think also, we've saved or gone in and kind of rescued a ton of kind of failed VDI programs, and it is exactly kind of all these points of, a lot of folks kind of jump the gun ahead of the technology or apply server-based models to doing VDI, and it doesn't work. It doesn't scale. And I think, and that's not some of the old world problems. But what happens is you've got battle scars. You got people remember those pain points, those late nights, those pissed off users. I'm not doing that again. I'm not going down that path again. I don't care how you go about it. So when we first started selling, we would come out and say, this is not your grandma's VDI. We literally had marketing posters around it, right? And our sales guys would go in and say, okay, what's the one thing, what's the killer app that we can show the performance of our virtual desktops? Video. So we started going out to customers over their Wi-Fi, connecting to a virtual desktop and running video. And people were, wow, that's amazing. And it started to change the paradigm, saying, okay, maybe you can have performance over the WAN. Maybe you can do this. And then the other thing is, don't try to kind of boil the ocean, right? Look for that need. So we call it land and expand, right? We went into one customer, an early customer of ours, kind of major healthcare provider, and we said, look, we're going to give you 25 desktops, and we're going to do this one pending event for you, right? At a pending event, and we knocked it out of the park. And then it started to get exposure to the other departments, and they said, hey, we want that too. Hey, we want that too. And before you know it, the entire company is running off of our desktop as a service, right? You don't try to go in all in, because number one, there's too many use cases, there's too many nuances, there's, back to your personalization, you gotta personalize it for that department's needs. What accounting needs is a whole lot different from what an engineer needs, right? Totally different use case, totally different models, totally different ways of using the PC. So I think you gotta also kind of, land and expand, take that, I can focus on this area and I can knock it out of the park, and it will gain popularity as you move through it.
Such great advice. I love that idea of the other end users saying, I want that. Yes. How often do you see that?
That's your best marketing. That is your best marketing.
Right? Yeah, none of the enterprise customers we have started out by buying 10,000 Citrix licenses.
Yeah, right.
They all started by buying 25.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But I think we've all heard it called crack, right? I mean,
right.
Oh
give
my
him a
God.
taste.
And yeah, give him a taste, right? And then, well, I got to have that. Well, he's working from home. I want to work from home.
Yeah,
and it's the same idea, right? And you really do only get, if you think of it like going to a restaurant, right? Like you go to a restaurant and the food's really crappy. Oh, you're not going back. You might go back in a few years. Maybe they got a new chef. Maybe they got a new menu. Maybe I forgot how bad it was. I'll try it again, right? So if you don't do this right, you don't get to come back 6 months later and try it again. You really only get one chance, and then you're dead in the water for a while.
Brian, you guys are doing this. I want to talk about cloud and the cloud migrations that all you guys are seeing that you have done. What are the driving kind of issues that are pushing people to this cloud migration with desktop as a service?
Yeah, no, I think this is a big piece of this transformation that we're going under. So we're working with a current customer, actually based out of Germany in Munich, that's looking to take on manufacturers, manufacturers in other countries and acquire them and make them more efficient, right? So we actually flew out to Munich back in June to architect what this cloud strategy would look like for this customer. Pretty big customer, tens of thousands of employees across the country, but an appetite to acquire. One of the complexities they had is, how do we, as an organization, bring on board a 500-person company that doesn't take 6 months to do, right? I don't want to spend the time of all this data conversion into my on-prem Germany data center, figure out how I pipe it into an American data center. I've got a cloud that has global reach. So how do we take that, provide a desktop as a service solution, at the same time provide the applications and access to data? And so it takes a little bit of architecting in terms of data locality to make sure you're not crossing the ocean and depending upon transmit for user experience. And so what we're seeing is really leveraging Citrix-based approaches, or in this case definitely Citrix, but leveraging their now Citrix Cloud to deliver that seamless management of the back-end environment while providing the same flexibility of doing server-based computing, whether it's your typical XenApp presented desktop or XenApp applications, or driving them to a Zen desktop workload with Client OS. And so as they kind of onboard these new M&As, one of the complexities is that I don't want to take their existing crap that exists in their environment, legacy PCs, and try to turn that into my new devices I have to manage. So wouldn't it be great if we flew out a crate of iGel UD3s, or maybe even now UDPs, that they can pop that into those devices and immediately jump into their cloud-based desktop securely, and gain access to the applications and desktops that are being served from the cloud. And so I think, when you talk about mergers and acquisitions and, large organizations that are looking to acquire, they couldn't do that both from a cost perspective or from a human power perspective, unless you're able to leverage agile and cloud-based solutions.
It's amazing. Go down the line.
Yeah, I'll comment just real quick. I think the key to those cloud migrations is what you said, strategy. You got to have a plan, and you got to think about all the complexities. You know, a lot of folks will look at cloud and say, "Oh, that's the silver bullet. That's the it's the rainbows and butterflies. All my problems are going to be solved up in that white fluffy thing."
Yeah.
It's not the case, right? Cloud doesn't come with DR. It doesn't. You got to plan through that. You have to architect. You have to design, and you have to leverage the power of each one of the cloud providers based on its core capabilities. And if you don't take that thoughtful approach, you're going to jump in the cloud, and it's just going to be like early adopters of VDI. You jump in, you fail, and you pull back, and you pull back way, a whole lot. And really, you don't need to do that. It's really about taking a thoughtful approach, architect, build a solution, build a strategy, and take it stepwise. Right? Continuous improvement, continuous integration. That's the key to really having a successful cloud migration. You can't you can't do it all at once.
You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Girls first. All right. So again, being in the business 30 years, we've got 30 years of customers that have old stuff. And every single one of our customers are looking at migrating to the cloud. Every single one of them are not sure how to do it.
Yeah.
So, the points that are being made here about sitting down with your partners, because there's going to be more than one. You're going to be looking at, maybe an MTM, Addition, Core-Tech, or Right Solutions to pull it together. You're more than likely going to be working with an AWS or Azure. You're going to be working with Microsoft. You've got to have a partner that's going to be able to pull all that together and build a plan for your business and the outcomes of your business that make sense. How do you migrate people that are, the employees that you've got that are using services that you've deployed over the past, 20, 30 years? How do you move that? How do you limit the risk? How do you limit the disruption to your business? I mean, disrupt in your business is a bad thing, unless you're launching a new product. But if you're impacting your business by something that you're rolling out, then you're going to have issues. So what I've always coached my team to do is to make sure that they stay very laser focused with our customers on the business outcomes. What is it that they're trying to drive? What is the customer retention plan? What is the growth plan? What's the revenue plan? Understand what's going on in the customer's business in order to make sure that whatever we're recommending as they make this migration, this transformation, it is seamless and easy and one click and complete.
Yeah, no good. So cloud's not just easy? Yeah, I think it's a classic case of you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I think you can listen to brilliant marketing people like Jed and go, oh yeah, well that sounds pretty easy. Let's do that. So I think we do a lot of conversations with customers around where they're trying to go and what they're trying to accomplish. Right? I think it's a lot of listening and a lot less talking. And taking that information back and being able to present to our customers some ideas around what they're trying to accomplish, right? Not all the businesses that we work with are the same. They're all different. And I think what you said around mergers and acquisitions, absolutely. I mean, if you read the news, 2018 is the year of acquisitions and mergers, right? And a lot of the customers we're working with, they're either getting acquired or they're doing the acquiring.
Yeah.
And to be able to move quickly, to be able to open offices quickly, to be able to get people on off of the apps that they were using yesterday and on the new apps that you want them to use today is a real challenge. And I think being able to do it with tools like iGel and delivering virtual desktops or applications from really anywhere to anywhere, those are the challenges that we're trying to help people solve today.
The speed and agility is key. You really got to have that, right? Guys, do you have any questions from the audience? You got these guys up here. If there's any questions, I mean, one of the things that's interesting, right? If you're in the audience, I guess I'd be looking for some free advice. I'd say, like, look, I have this kind of environment. What would you do? You know what I mean? Anyway, I guess I really want to hit on this security thing because I think it's a huge differentiator for iGel, and it's this, you talked about Imprivata. Guys, talk about security. Then you look at Spectre and Meltdown and what iGel did there, right on top of it. How big an issue is security in these environments? And I'll start with you, Robert. Talk about it. How big an issue is security, and what are you guys doing to make sure that people get it? You're more secure with the device, with the desktop as a service.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, security is paramount, right? The stats are out there. People, CIOs are spending a ton of money on securing, and it's kind of one of those things, you don't know what you don't know, right? Yeah. And you don't know that you've been exploited until it's too late, typically. Yeah. So security is paramount for us, and really, it's also, compliance that's wrapped up, because security and compliance are not the same thing. Right? Security is kind of building a moat and putting the swords out there and saying, okay, I'm watching my perimeter, but how do I validate that nothing actually came in? That's compliance. You have to have both. And I think one of the things that we do a lot of work around securing the perimeter, securing things, making sure that things aren't coming in, so we hope. But how do we prove that that's the case? And how do we maintain that? How do we consistently show that we're doing those types of things and there's nothing actually coming inside of where it shouldn't be? So I think, the iGel kind of gives us, whether it's the UD Pocket or the UD3 or what have you, it gives us that seamless connection that we know to the endpoint, it is secure. Because really, in the data center, I got my big moat, I got my guards, out there, I got my IDS, my IPS, I got all kinds of things that are protecting my data center, but the most insecure component is that endpoint.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? What's going to come through that endpoint? Because that has a direct connection to my environment. So you really got to focus on the endpoint and then work your way back, because we've all done data center security for years, right? We know the players there. We know how secure that can be, and really that endpoint is to me that's the most insecure component, and I think that's where iGel plays a huge role. I talked about us going through our audit. I mean, going through and showing those controls. Right, and then proving that we're doing those things, that's huge, right? It's not just, hey, we did it, but hey, I can prove that we did it as well, and I can prove that we are secure.
That's amazing.
One of the things that we do to help our customers out is P-testing. So we'll come out and we'll actually do some penetration testing and help with some of the vulnerability spots. But when we're putting together our cloud solutions for a customer, we show every single piece, every single point of security at the endpoint, at the route and switch, at the storage, at each layer of the solution itself. It is easily the one, I would say the one factor that every single customer mentions about why they're hesitating moving to a cloud in an accelerated manner, is they're just so unsure about what's going to happen, because they can't control the cloud. Whatever leaves their premise is now in the hands of the cloud. So, and they're all, they're all worried. Everybody's worried about that. So you've got to prove exactly where vulnerabilities would sit and what your solution or what your partner's solution is doing to address that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look. I think mitigating vulnerabilities and security issues is, we talk about it differently today, but we've been talking about it for a long time, right? In the early days of delivering virtual apps and virtual desktops with XenApp and those types of solutions, you would turn on the news at 5 o'clock and you would see the story about the healthcare worker that left their laptop in their car and the laptop got stolen, and now we have a really bad story, right? And I think we would talk back then about keeping the data inside the data center, securing the data in the data center. And I think that conversation is still relevant. It's still the same. It's still keeping the data, whether it's in the data center or in the cloud. It's still, how do you feel more comfortable with it sitting on my laptop in my car or with it sitting in AWS, right? So we still talk about it in the same way. We just changed the conversation a little bit.
Yeah, for us, it's kind of a multi-pronged approach, right? Whether you're jumping to the cloud, obviously as a IT culture, you need to be jumping into the cloud with a security conscious, right? So whatever you're architecting, you're going to have to lay into the same principles that you're doing inside your inside data center. So it's key to help the customer recognize that, is that, you know, going back to that holistic strategy, walking into the cloud with a mindset and culture of security. But inside a lot of the spaces that we work at scale in, and we, you know, some of our biggest healthcare customers, you know, 150,000, 200,000 users, you know, using about 50,000 concurrent desktops, you know, really big at scale. You know, we have to be conscious of security at the edge, because if I'm not giving an experience to a doctor at reconnecting a desktop in under 5 seconds, they might walk from being a doctor of that institution, right? Because they don't want to do their job, that's something that's cumbersome. So we have to match security with user functionality. And, you know, we all know it's kind of somewhat of a trade-off sometimes. You know, you have to give somewhat of a user experience that allows that user to be efficient, maybe see more patients per day, but maybe lay in, you know, a passive proximity scan to automated desktop launch, or stop making doctors put in their username and passwords with the 7 apps that they jump into, SSO credential that, right? So it's really leveraging the partnerships as an integrator that we hold and maintain to bring these solutions to market to help customers achieve really the goals for their end users, right? And it's not only speed and efficiency, but it's cost, right? They can't drive a Windows 10 virtual desktop to 14,000 users because it's going to cost X million dollars a year in Microsoft licensing. Yeah. So how do you, you know, look at that security balanced with cost, and maybe, you know, flip 80% of those users to a XenApp model where you can drive a third or 2/3 more density on that on-prem solution, or, you know, your IaaS costs, you know, month over month.
Keep the mic, because I want you to talk a little bit about the application challenges, all you guys, the application challenges, because at the end of the day, it's all about the applications. And I know you dealing with the electronic healthcare records and those hospital environments. Talk about the application challenges and how you're overcoming them with desktop as a service.
You know, applications, for the most part, become most apparent when you change the underlying OS, right? I can run Windows XP and Windows 7 for the rest of my life and my applications don't change. But boy, Microsoft's going to force a support cost on me if I don't jump to Windows 10 in a moderate amount of time. So I've got to really understand my application portfolio, what applications I might need to start looking at deprecating because it's not going to be supported on Windows 10, or, oh, by the way, that company went out of business years ago. Yeah. So you deal with that quite a bit. But, you know, it's really understanding, you know, how you use application layering technologies that, you know, might come with Citrix or VMware for your on-prem solutions, or maybe even adopting a cloud-based approach from delivering that those application sets, and then merging that desktop experiences, leveraging multiple pieces of that. You know, sometimes, you know, maybe it's not closely identified to healthcare alone, but, you know, some of these healthcare organizations, they're managing app portfolios of 9,000 and 10,000 apps. Like, how is that humanly possible? You know, when they look across 32 hospital systems and say, not only am I managing 10,000 apps, but I've got 6 EMRs that I'm leveraging because I've acquired 6 hospitals over the course of 2 or 3 years. You know, without a proper app virtualization or desktop strategy, it's almost an impossible task. You can't do that with legacy tool sets or even common endpoint strategies anymore. There's just no way to do it. And a lot of times we're being forced as IT to do it in a speed and efficiency that we can't do without, you know, these modern tool sets.
Yeah, just one quick thing to add on to that as well is not only the applications themselves, but the operating systems that they run on. And if you think about it, you know, from Windows XP to Windows 7 to Windows 10, I mean, really there's only been 3 enterprise operating systems in the last 15 years, right? Everything in between was skipped, right? So we've had a few opportunities over the last 15 years to move customers from Windows XP to Windows 7, and now from Windows 7 to Windows 10. And that's a pretty monumental shift, not just from a user perspective, and it's a different OS, and it looks and feels different, and I gotta learn the new nuances of this new operating system. But on the back end, for us as IT engineers, making those applications work on that operating system, or deprecating them, or replacing them with something else. And so we've looked at that and said, okay, we can do that every 5 years. That's fine. Microsoft has now released Windows 10, the last OS ever. But if you dig into Windows 10 and you understand what's going on, every 6 months we're really getting a new OS. right? And so from an application perspective, the days of going, well, I'll just, 5 years from now, I'm going to have to deal with that again. Those days are over. You're dealing with it all the time now. And so from an application perspective, keeping up with how my applications run on this version of Windows 10 to this version of Windows 10 to this version of Windows 10, to your point, the days of managing that the way we used to manage it are over. It's just not humanly possible.
Yeah, and you've got the complication of regulations, legacy apps. I mean, there are apps out there that you'd have to pry them from their cold, dead hands. So you've got to build that into the plan, how you're planning to deliver those apps. And I'd say, again, I mean, we've all been saying it, iGel has been integral in that space. I mean, the ability to be able to get to apps that would almost be impossible to get to in any other kind of environment has been really helpful to the business.
And I think also, from an application delivery perspective, kind of everything's on the table, right? You're going to have legacy apps that are just going to be legacy apps and are going to be there, to your point, pry them from my cold, dead hands, Then you've got those that can be layered. Then you've got those that will be in, in some kind of container. And then you got those that are going to go to SaaS, right? So you have to have a strategy, kind of to your point, thinking about what's the life cycle of these applications, and are they going to be integral to the business, and then layer that out in kind of a matrix and think about, okay, that's going to take a refresh, every 6 months. That's going to be a refresh every year, and that one's going to be on the stand for 5 years, right? And then try to apply the best approach from a delivery standpoint, whether that's remote, RDS or what have you. Just try to, apply the right technologies to deliver that app to your users.
I want to talk a little bit about analytics, and you guys are doing Vision Insights, which is amazing. And I want to talk about the what you're seeing with the analytics and the insights, both for the business and the business customers. What are you guys finding there?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the challenges, and I've been around cloud for 20 plus years, or when it was in MSP and kind of as it grew up, one of the challenges is that cloud is typically a black box. You don't know what's happening under the hood. And that's something that we wanted to change the game and be transparent. We wanted to actually show the value. Yes, when you hit the light switch, your desktop comes on. It always comes on, but this is what's happening behind the scenes. This is what your users are doing. This is how they're functioning. This is how efficient they are. This is their connectivity in between the environments. And this is how much, how many licenses you're using. Right, so we go into a lot of organizations that have tons and tons of license costs, but they're only using 50, but they bought 500. Yeah, why do you need that, right? I mean, if I can show that to your CFO in a nice dashboard, like this is how many you bought, this is how many you're using, you could save a couple $1 million by just reducing that. That's the kind of stuff that the Insights is meant to do. It's really to say cloud is awesome, but here's some analytics to help you with your business and help you make good financial, fiscal decisions as you're going through this cloud migration.
Guys, what are you seeing now? And another funny thing.
I think we're getting the hook, though.
Yeah. Are we getting the hook?
Yeah, we're getting the hook.
Oh, okay. Man. All right. All right. Last thing, real quick. What do you love about VDI and what do you hate about VDI? Real quick, 30 seconds each.
You want me to?
Go ahead. Come on.
Well, what I hate about VDI is sometimes it is a pain in the neck to access, and actually, our business, our company gets blamed for a lot of back-end stuff that's happening on on Citrix, which it's not actually Citrix, it's other things. What I love about VDI is just the ability to be secure, to onboard and offboard quickly. And be able to get your business up and running in a really fast manner.
Awesome.
Yeah, what I hate about it, I think that if you've been doing this for a long time, that when I drove into work this morning, I made a right-hand turn and my wheel made this funny noise, and I'm pretty sure it's probably Citrix. It's all Citrix, right? What I love about it is we're making real-world changes to the way people interact with their PC and the way they do business, right? You spend more time behind the keyboard than you do at your own house. And so I think that we're doing real-world, really good stuff to make people's lives while they're at work better, easier, more efficient, less painful, all those things.
Right.
What I hate about VDI is the term VDI. Because when people hear the term VDI, it instantly brings back bad memories. It brings back, it's a four-letter word. Yep. So yeah, that's definitely something I hate about. No two VDI types are the same, right? So yeah, definitely don't like that term. When you can leverage multiple virtualization desktop strategies to achieve a business goal. That's what I love about VDI. So you can do an RDS-based desktop using native Microsoft. You can jump into a Zen app presented desktop or a Windows 7 VDI client-based OS VDI instance. And you know what? They can deliver similar experiences at different cost models. And so I love the flexibility of VDI, being able to roll it out to your users quickly, efficiently, with changes in mind, and be able to adapt to business needs and requirements.
Love it. Robert, anything? Finish it up.
I agree.
All right. Give these guys a round of applause. Awesome job, guys. Great job. Thanks so much, guys. That was awesome. Come on. Right there.